everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got the latest in Smith & Wesson's M&P M2.0 lineup. It's the M&P 9 Shield EZ. The Shield EZ 380 came out quite a while back, and it's actually turned out to be quite popular. It's a great little gun. But there were a lot of people that said for the size of it, it shouldn't be a 380, 380 should be smaller. One of the things you'll find is there's not a whole lot of entries in the easy-to-rack territory, especially in the more modern format, polymer, without extra controls that you have to mess with, that are in 9mm. There's a lot of them in 380. Walther makes a PK380, Smith & Wesson makes a 380 EZ. There's quite a few 380s that are easy to rack, but not as many 9mm. So they did make it a 9mm, and we'll start out with, of course, we have an empty one. But this one is, as they state, really easy to rack. Pull it back quite easily. Now, for me to pull it back with two fingers like this doesn't necessarily prove anything, because I can rack a Desert Eagle this way. So I'm going to try to do it with an even weaker combination of fingers. I'm just going to take these two fingers, and I can rack it. So if you have weaker hands, you're not going to have any problem racking this, and you can actually now get into the 9mm territory. There's a few things that make it easy to rack. Part of it's the overall design of it. The slide is lighter, the recoil spring is lighter, basically the engineering of it. But at the back you have these fish scale serrations. They're not abrasive, they don't hurt your hand, but once you squeeze even a little bit, they dig in. So you can easily get a hold of them. And then, if you look at the back here, there's kind of a shelf. There's a little wing back there, and it's kind of molded in. It's basically a serration that sticks up, and that's on both sides. So as your hand comes back, not only does it grip into these fish scales, but it catches fairly easily on the back of it. So if you have enough strength to basically close your fingers, you can rack this slide quite easily. So if you've got somebody that's got weaker hands, has a difficulty racking a full-size 9mm, or pretty much the majority of the 9mm out there, this could actually put them into the 9mm territory. The next thing that would, of course, be important in that is, great, I can rack it, I can get around in it, I can clear a malfunction, but am I going to be able to keep it in my hands? Well, it's got really nice texturing all the way around. It kind of looks like sandpaper, sounds like it when I run my hands across it, but it doesn't hurt like sandpaper. It's not taking pieces off of my hand. The other aspect of it is recoil. Recoil on this is an exceptionally mild recoil. The lighter slide, the lighter springs, the way they've set this up not only makes the slide easy to rack, but it really does a good job of controlling recoil. So it's very comfortable to hold, very comfortable to operate, and very easy to keep where it belongs. It's got a couple safety features. Of course, it has the internal drop safety that all of them have these days. It is a hammer-fired gun, but it's an internal hammer, so it looks like a striker gun, but there's a hammer back here. You'll see when I get it apart. And it has this grip safety. Now these are kind of contentious. You'll see these on 1911s, of course. Most people accept them on a 1911 because it's part of the design. It's always been. You'll see them on the XDMs by Springfield. There's a lot of complaints about that. The same complaint could be had, but the same solution also fits. The gun just works. If you've got a proper grip, you're going to depress this grip safety and you're not going to have a problem. Of these, the XDMs, the 1911s, I've never had one that was in good operating order fail to fire because the grip safety interfered. So it doesn't really cause any problem, and it does incrementally add some safety capability. And unlike some of the other designs where the grip safety interferes with operation of the gun beyond the trigger, with the grip safety not pulled, the trigger goes dead. But I can still cycle the gun, I can chamber around. I can do anything I want to except fire it. Hold the grip safety, and I can fire the gun. So it really does work well, and there's enough of extra material. It doesn't bite into your hand, but it will definitely reliably depress. A few of the other features that you've got, you have a 3-slot rail. They do make a version of this with a Crimson Trace laser guard, kind of like you see on the Glocks, goes around the trigger guard. Those work very, very well. So if you chose that version of it, you won't have some of the problems that integral lasers have, because that's a very proven technology. Crimson Trace has spent years getting that perfected. Of course, I showed you the fish scale at the back. It's got some light fish scales at the front if you want to do a press check. They're very faint, they're very small, and there's not a whole lot of them. But again, this slide is easy to rack, so if all you're wanting to do is pull it back a little bit so you can peek into the chamber, it's going to work perfect for that. The sights are a 3-dot bright white sight, quite easy to see at the range, and they're both dovetailed front and rear, so you can swap them out if you want, and the rear is adjustable. So overall, you've got a very good set of sights, a well-designed. You've got a loaded chamber indicator here on the top, so it's got all the safety features, all the ergonomic features, and all the tactical features that you might want to have. The magazines are 8-round, just like the 380EZ, and they've got wings on them that make it easy to pull down the follower with either hand or with a couple fingers to load the magazines. Because again, if you're going to have constrained hand strength, trying to load difficult magazines doesn't help solve your problem. So even the magazines address the issues associated with limited hand strength and why you might want an EZ. Now I've talked a lot about the easy to rack feature of it. Of course, that's the claim to fame on this gun. But this gun isn't just for somebody that needs that. Overall, it's designed to be a good carry gun for anybody. It's it's well designed, easy to use, and like the 380 version, which I have here, which of course unloaded, I happen to have a mag sitting in it, but they're about the same size. I think the 9 is just a hair bigger. When we do our full comparison between the two, I'll have some exact specs for you. But they didn't make it drastically larger. It's just a hair larger. We're probably talking, hundredths of an inch, tenths of an inch kind of territory between them. But if you're familiar with the 380Z, it's really the same footprint, the same pattern, and the same manual of arms. Even same basic magazines. Of course, the 380 the magazines are a little bit smaller, and the numbers are kind of just placed a little differently than on the 9mm. And of course they're the same magazine. I just realized I grabbed two 9mm. They look close enough together that you can easily make that mistake. This one's definitely the 380 because I just pulled it out of the 380 and it says 380 Auto. So let's do that comparison a little more accurately. You'll see the magazines are slightly different, but they're overall the same basic pattern. There's a little bit more of a recess here, round instead of flat, but basically the same design. So what they did is they carried forward the design intent of the 380 and then modified it in the few places that needed to be modified to become a 9mm. Disassembly of this is easy to do, but it's a little bit twitchy. So when I go through the disassembly process, I'll point out a few of the places you can get caught up if you're not careful. Starting with locking it back. So you lock it back, flip the lever down, which the lever is really easy to get a hold of when you turn it the right way. I got it kind of turned parallel to me so I can show it on the camera. But here's where you can get in trouble. Number one, you're not going to touch the trigger. If you pull the trigger, you won't be able to get the gun apart without having to reset it. But in theory, at this point, I would make sure I don't have the grip safety, and I'll show you why in a moment. So you want to grab it in such a way that you're not grabbing the grip safety. In theory, I should be able to just do that. And most of the time you can. But every once in a while it'll hang up and you'll have to kind of wiggle and play with it to get it to come off. But just kind of persevere. Once you get the pattern and you get that flow just right, it'll come right apart. But it is a little quirky. But when you have your finger on the grip safety, this protrudes. And it will hang up on the back of the slide. Because you'll see it's next to the ejector, which is what this cutout is for. So it'll end up hitting here. So if you have the grip safety held, you're not going to get it apart. And that would be one reason why you might get kind of hung up in the middle and have to play with it to get it loose. The other reason is if you pull the trigger, of course the hammer is going to be forward, it'll be up here, and it'll block it. If you make the mistake of pulling the trigger, your only chance is to kind of wiggle it till you can get it to cycle it, lock it back again to reset the hammer. I did run into the occasional hassle till I played with it enough to realize, okay, this is exactly how you do it. And once you figure out the pattern, it just works. It is relatively easy to maintain. It's well constructed in here. Nice rails at the front. Smaller rails at the back. Of course, the front rails do all of the work of taking the abuse. And a slightly complicated fire control group. You've got I'm not going to pull the trigger, but you've got the hammer. Right back here is the little protrusion for the drop safety. And this is for your grip safety. So there's a few things going on. And if you had the thumb safety model, they do have a thumb safety model, there'd be a thumb safety right here, and there'd be one more arm in here that gets in the way of stuff. Now, here is the slide. has a single recoil spring, and you'll see that it's kind of thin and long. It's a wafer spring. The spring is lighter, and it is important to make sure, you'll see that there's flats on it. These flats have to line up properly here to be parallel, and I'll show you when I go to put it back together. But if you have it turned sideways, you won't be able to put the gun back together. Now, unlike some of the early P320s, it will not let you get it together, whereas they would let you get it together and then it would jam, you couldn't get it apart. If you make the mistake of having this thing turned the wrong way, you just won't be able to put it together till you correct it, but it's not going to jam you up. Pull out the barrel. Barrel looks pretty conventional. If you look at this barrel compared to any of the other striker-fired guns out there, it pretty much looks like all of them. It's got a nice polished feed ramp. It's not mirror polish. It's what I like to call machine polish because you can see machining marks in it, but it's smooth. And the barrel itself is conventional rifling and very well done. No chattering, no machining marks, just nice and smooth. Overall, it's a very well done barrel. And you tend to find that Smith & Wesson's quality on these type of guns has been actually really good on the M&P, the M2.0 series. Slide is similar to what you're used to seeing. There's a cutout in here to make room for the hammer. And of course the firing pin is right there. The firing pin safety mechanism is right here. And that's the striker block. The arm on the trigger takes care of that. And then the rest of it is pretty conventional. They're stainless steel slides, stainless steel barrel, and what they call Armonite finish on it. So it should be durable, it should be very corrosion resistant, and should hold up quite well. And one thing I realized as I'm sitting here talking about some numbers, I never actually went through the design specs. So when I get it all put back together before we wrap up, I'll give you the dimensions and the weight and all that kind of fun stuff that I usually do at the beginning. So I'm going to put it back together, slide the barrel in, grab the recoil spring, and I'm going to make sure that these flats run parallel. So it's like that. If I have it like that, I won't be able to get it back together. Parts will hit. That's the biggest thing to just watch, is to make sure you've got it turned. And you can see when I line it up properly, it's kind of smooth going across here. And then if I've done that right, I should be able to just slide it back on. And this is what you'll sometimes run into, is having to play with it a little bit. Wiggle it, it won't just slide on. Flip that. And the same thing, by the way, applied with the grip safety. I had to make sure that I was holding it either down here or like this, not depressing the grip safety to be able to assemble it. So, before we go any further, let's just talk about the dimensions. It's 6.8 inches front to back. It's 4.9 inches top to bottom with a flush mount magazine in it. And it's 1.15 inches wide just by itself. 1.43 inches at the wings where it sticks out a little bit. And by the way, when you think about these wings, it's kind of rounded. So from the back to going towards the front, it's rounded. And even the edge of the fish scale at the very edge is rounded a little bit. So when this thing's sitting in a holster pressing up against your body, it's not going to be chafing at you. It's nice and smooth and round. It's only when you come at it from this direction that it wants to hook your hand. So it's well thought through. They thought about how to do that, but not create a source of annoyance when the thing's pressing up against your body and inside the waistband holster. The last number, of course, you're probably interested in is how much do they cost. They've got a $479 MSRP. Street price right now is about $399, which is unusual because they're new. Usually when something's new, you're paying full price, sometimes over full price. These, if you can find one, right now they're a bit of a unicorn, they're in the $399 territory. From a perception at the range, I'd previously mentioned that it was comfortable to hold, easy to operate, and it had very minimal recoil. I do want to call out one issue we had with it, and at this point I'm not ready to write the gun off because of it. I'm going to look at it as potential break-in issue. But a few times it locked back. It didn't jam, it just locked back, which is usually caused by one of two things. Right in the slide stop slide release, well, my hands aren't big enough for that. My hands are going to be, I got a hold of it, my hands are going to be nowhere near that, and I actually watched for that. And the other thing that can do it is on these smaller, narrower guns, if the edge of a cartridge catches the bottom of the slide stop slide release, it can cause that same thing as well. But I looked at this one. The only thing that's really can catch it is this little pin, which is of course going to be down when the magazine's loaded. The magazine is actually narrow enough and the gun is wide enough that the loaded round is nowhere near it. So I'm not sure what caused that. I'm going to have to look at it a little bit. If I have continuing problems, I'll call Smith & Wesson. But my initial thought of it is it may have something to do with just some initial break-in behavior. If it continues to do it, I'll definitely update you guys. If the problem goes away, turns out to be ammo related, I'll let you know as well. But other than that, it was easy to shoot it well. Some of these guns, this narrower grips can be hard to just get your hands right. I did have a couple where I pulled one until I kind of figured out exactly how to hold it. But overall, it's easy to shoot well. The sights are easy to see. It's very easy to get it back on target. It's really quite a nice gun. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell up there if you do so you get notified. Check us out on Patreon, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Gunstreamer. We're kind of all everywhere now. Have a great day. Thank you.